Okay, so we are going to revise the product life cycle PPT. Okay, and so the first question is: do products have a life cycle? Do products have a birth? Do they have a death? Just like a human life. And the answer we saw was yes, they do. Here are a few products. You can see the Maruti 800 and HMT. These are brands which have died, so to say. And in the product category, you have a VCR and a pager, which are product categories which also are no longer there. But as just products, die, products are born, and here we have, amongst a lot of fanfare, iPhone X or iPhone 10 was born. Uber Eats was born this last. So yes, behold, this is what the product life cycle looks like. It's a bell-shaped, a sort of bell-shaped curve. Please also note that PLC, the product life cycle, applies to product categories, products, and brands. The y-axis, if you look at the graph, the y-axis represents the money, and the x-axis would represent the timeline. It shows 5 stages over here. You can also note that there's a red line, which is typically known as the product life cycle curve, which represents sales. There's also a blue line here, and that represents the profit throughout the 5 stages. Okay, so you might just want to spend some time on this, because you never know, I may be asking a question. So just spend some time on the product life cycle. So product life cycle, why are we studying it? It's a marketing concept, it's a tool, and especially based on PLC we can come up with marketing strategies. So that's the importance of it. Now, though there are we saw 5 stages, we're going to mainly focus on the 4 stages, that is the stages after birth. That's introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The phase before launch is the product development stage, or the R&D phase, during which typically the product is being built, and there's money and time is investing into develop a product, which could be a goods or a service. This is typically a phase where money is being sunk in, because there's no sales that's happening, so money is being sunk and the product is being developed there. And then finally the product is launched. Once it's launched, we begin the introduction stage. So an introduction stage would typically involve high promotional expense, and you're building your distribution channels, so obviously you're spending money there. So typically profits are going to be negative or low. You can see the curve, how it goes. Examples, we saw iPhone 10 or iPhone X, Uber Eats. Now, of course, iPhone X came up with a lot of fanfare, and probably the sales cycle would have been slightly different because of the brand that iPhone already has. But Uber Eats would have been a typical product which is launched. You could see the amount of promotions they were offering, free promotions. It's still going on, and it's more an awareness stage for them. The following are typical characteristics that we have. The sales, the cost, the profit, the customers you're targeting. Now just note that customers, there is something called as an adoption phase, adoption curve. And the adoption curve, you can probably check it out, involves first innovators, then early adopters, early majority, and then finally laggards. So in introduction stage, you're targeting innovators. Now, if you're one among the first in the product category, then your competition is few. But if you're in a category which is already established, you could have high competition also. What would be the strategies? Obviously, an effective launch strategy. We've seen that for iPhone 10. You're building your distribution and you want to slowly build it up. Okay, so you're going to choose certain distribution channels. Your communication is focused at awareness. and you're targeting early adopters. Something worth noting here is something called as a pioneer advantage. Now, certain many brands, in every product category, there is a brand which is the first to start a product category, okay, or the first to be there. And that can give you an advantage which is called a pioneer advantage. I've listed down two examples here. One being Bisleri. Bisleri can be, said to be the pioneer of mineral water in India, and being the first one to start this whole product category, they have got an advantage to the extent that it's become a generic name. That when people ask for mineral water, you're almost asking for Bisleri, right? And so that's an advantage that can be created if you're this, the first mover advantage, if you want to say that. Amazon is another example. They've effectively used their first mover advantage. But then again, there are companies that are definitely enough and more examples of companies which have not been able to leverage their first mover advantage. You can definitely, a few names are given down there in Kotler on this. Okay. So after the introduction stage comes the next phase, which is the growth phase. Now you can see a surge in sales. The red lines, this suddenly starts going up, and this is typically the time when there's most excitement about the product. This the most exciting times to be in a company. In fact, this is the best time to join a company when it's in the growth phase. And so I'm listed here a few examples. The first two being product categories. E-commerce companies. Now, probably this is debatable, but definitely we are seeing growth in e-commerce companies, and with respect to sales, it's a growing market. I'm not so sure about the profits, because there's still a lot of companies which may not the promotion, so to say, are eating out the profits. But with respect to growth terms, definitely you can see year on year the growth is taking place, and it's a huge excitement time for them. Smart TVs, another product category which is in the growth stage. I've taken two products here, which is Gold's Gym and Jio. Gold's Gym probably is not a growth phase in Bangalore, but definitely if you look at second tier cities, you can see the growth of the gym culture. And Gold's Gym is probably riding in this, one of the the front runners in building this culture, building gyms in second tier cities. Jio is also in the growth phase. After its launch, we're seeing it, it's reaching out to more players, touching more customers. So what are the typical characteristics? An upsurge in sales. You can look at the cost, you can look at the profit curve, how it's the rising profits. With respect to adoption, yes, it's it's now targeting early adopters. The competitors start seeing opportunity, and therefore they start joining the bandwagon. You see the growing number of competitors. So what are the strategies? You see a more competitive market. The market obviously becomes competitive. Suddenly you have a lot of new players coming into the market. And this is a time where you start offering new models, product extensions, better features. Because now you need to reach as much customers as possible. You price it to penetrate the market. You build an intensive distribution. You're targeting the mass market, or trying to reach out to maximum number of possible customers at this stage. So that's what the strategy will be about. So once the growth phase is over, you reach the maturity stage. This is where the bell curve begins to taper off. That's definitely the sales growth slows down, and you're reaching the top of the bell. A few examples from the product category we can call FMCG market, or the IT industry. IT industry, in fact, there's a lot of discussion about India reaching maturity in the IT industry, which once was a growth industry. FMCG is another company which or another product category which we say is in saturation stage. However, you could say that rural markets still there is growth over there, but when it comes to urban cities, urban places, definitely you can say FMCG product category is in a maturity phase. And typically, therefore, the examples of brands would be Lux or a Cola. If you look at the growth rates of these brands, you will typically see that the sales growth rate of these brands, you will see that they would be in a maturity stage. However, the fact remains that India as a market is a growing market, and therefore you could see, and some of these products which are in maturity could find a growth phase again, given the way it's a function of the whole market they are working in also. What would be the typical characteristics? You find that it touches the peak of sales and it touches the peak of profits. You get your highest profits during this phase. Your costs are low, and the customers is mainly the middle majority that you're looking at. You may not be adding too many new customers, right? So that's why you're looking at a stable market, or that's why you have sort of already reached out to the possible or potential customers. So what would be your sales strategy, or what would be your marketing strategies in this phase? A would be product modification. By product modification, you would want to do quality improvement, feature improvement. This would be to catch the attention of customers and hopefully win them over. Increase usage rate. Now you can just to understand alternative ways to increase sales, you can refer to table 12.1 in Kotler. You can also go through Ansoff metrics, which again gives you various strategies in which you can increase sales. But clearly at this point in a saturated market, you would be aiming to win over your competitor customers, right? So you would be running promotions, etc., or stressing, as you can see, stress brand differences and benefits, so that you can win over your competitor customers. And you would want to create a more intensive distribution in any place where you're missing, or you feel that yes, you need a stronger presence so that you can milk things out. You would want to increase your distribution in such places. So that brings us to the last phase, which is the decline phase. The sales of all products and brands will eventually dip. That's the way it is. And it may plunge to zero or a low level, and you can clearly see the sales dipping in this stage, going down. We saw examples of Maruti 800 and HMT, which were brands which were big brands during the heydays, but slowly they were phased out. And in product categories, you can see something like a CRT TV, which is slowly being phased out, and the new LED and smart TVs taking over. In fact, I doubt whether you would find a CRT TV in most TV showrooms nowadays. What would be the characteristics? Yes, it's clearly declining sales. Cost, of course, continues to be low, but the profits are also declining. And you would find that it's reaching the last phase of laggards in the customer adoption phase. Competition, obviously starts moving out, especially if it's a dying category, declining category. You would find that the competitors would start moving out of the category, and just a few players will be remaining. What would be the strategies you would adopt, the marketing strategies? You would phase out if necessary, right? One, you would cut price. You would reduce your distribution, to reduce the distribution cost, because anyway your customer base is coming down, so you'll start cutting down on your distribution. Many companies, they decide to run it, keep on holding on as long as you are making some money from it. So ideally you reduce it to a minimum level to retain, let's say, hardcore loyalists. There are two other strategies which you can look at. One is harvesting and divesting. Harvesting calls for gradually reducing a product or business's cost while trying to maintain sales. And divesting would typically be to divest a product with strong distribution and residual goodwill. It can be you can sell it to another firm. So that's another way of phasing out. You can read more on this in Kotler. Okay.